We rock on with the Sports Groove 2.0 on something other than your radio. I'm Mark Gray, and we've got Black College Hall of Famers going to the Basketball Hall of Fame. Ben Wallace, more contemporary of Virginia Union. Bobby Dandridge. Those of y'all who don't know anything about hoops before the internet missed one of the great legendary players, and they all went to Black schools. Charlie NEAL joins us today, the voice of Black college sports for my generation, and of course the written notepad, the guru of all things historic in Black college sports is Luke Williams from the Black College Sports page. So in many respects, since I'm the social pontificator that brings us into the mainstream, I'm going to say Charlie NEAL is the Vin Scully of Black college sports, for those of you who are cool and paired, and that would make Luke Williams the Shirley Povich. So when we want knowledge, that's what we got. Great to have you guys along for the ride. Charlie, I know you, Bobby Dandridge, are real tight. You did games for BET. You know, it's a long time coming. How significant is his being in that hall of great players?
Well, first of all, it's long overdue. That's number one. It should have happened many, many years ago. You know, he was a superstar in the CIAA. He was an important part of two NBA titles, of course, with Milwaukee Bucks and of course, the Washington, at that time, the Washington Bullets. And the fact that, you know, he's finally being recognized after all these years, 30-some years since he left the game, that they're finally deciding to put him in. And he had to go in as a veteran from the veterans group, as opposed to going in, you know, after the 5 years or within that time frame. So I'm glad to see it finally happening for him. You know, I mean, he was a big part of what was happening as far as the NBA is concerned. And, you know, what he did as a player in the NBA for his size, he wasn't huge. You know, when you talk about size, he was only, 6'6", but and he played small forward, we know that, but he played a lot bigger than his size of 6'6", and you know, again, go back to his days at Norfolk State. When you think about that fast-paced era with Charles Fears, who was the coach of Norfolk State at that particular time, you know, he averaged better than 100 points. Now, when the team did average better than 100 points during his career there, I mean, I think they had one game there that they played overtime. I forget what it was. It was like 132 or something. You remember that?
134 to 132 CIAA finals against North Carolina A&T. Yeah.
And Bobby Dandridge was there.
Yeah.
But, you know, and the I guess if there's a sad part of this whole thing with Bobby Dandridge is Pee Wee Kirkland, who was one of a fantastic teammate with him at Norfolk State, had an opportunity to go to the NBA because, I mean, I think he was the CIAA Player of the Year, 1968.
MVP of the tournament.
Of the tournament was 68.
Mm-hmm. In that triple overtime game, he was the MVP. Yeah.
And you know, he had some issues off the court that derailed his career. But you know, those two, Pee Wee Kirkland deserves to be in the Basketball Hall of Fame too.
Yeah. Well, he is. If you're a street legend, you go anywhere near Rucker Park, and they'll tell you that, you know, you might as well name that basketball court after Pee Wee Kirkland for some of the stuff that he did. But Lou, let's talk about him for a second right now. In terms of, and Charlie and I were batting this around before we went off the air, and we couldn't figure it out. Who would Bobby Dandridge's game project to today? And I can't think. It's almost like a smaller version of Kevin Durant.
Well, you know, I've seen people today, even since he's been named to the Hall, some have compared him to Kawhi Leonard because he had a mid-range game that was off the charts. There was no three-pointer when he played both in college or the pros. So the way that Kawhi Leonard, before he stretched out to a three-point player, three-point shooter over the last 2 or 3 years, the way that he was so efficient in the paint and what we call the mid-range. But, you know, let me tell you how far I go back with Dandridge. My high school team, he went to Maggie Walker High School in Richmond, Virginia. Mm-hmm. And we played Maggie Walker in the 1965 VIA, which was the Black High School Championship League. And we beat them by 2 points on a tip-in by a guy from our hometown named Morrell James, who ended up going to Norfolk State with Bobby Dandridge. And the last time I saw Bobby Dandridge said that Morrell James carried the clipping from that game around him through their whole career at Norfolk State and would bring it out with him anytime he had an issue with Bobby D. But no, I would say Kawhi Leonard. I've heard even a comparison to Kevin Durant in the sense of the way that he could score. Remember, he averaged 32 points a game his senior year. He averaged 26 points per game. And I love, and I've said this to you, Mark, and I probably said it to Charlie too. I wanted to do a documentary about that team that had both Pee Wee Kirkland and Bobby Dandridge that averaged over 100 points a game. They had 7 players on that team, the first 7 players that all shot over 50% from the field. And as Charlie remembers, Curry Kilpatrick of Sports Illustrated did a story on Norfolk State. It was called the WHOOMF, WHOOMPF, because every time they shot in the gym at Norfolk State, the crowd would go whoomph. And he did a story really bringing them to the American public back in 1968. So, no, I think that, like Charlie said, you know, you can say overdue, but when you play with Oscar and Kareem on one team and you play with Wes Unseld and Elvin Hayes on the other, you definitely have to wait your turn regardless of anything. But the fact that he came from Norfolk State, he did so well in the CIAA, we were hoping that he would get the shot to go on to the NBA and turn it out. And he played kind of third fiddle for the Bucks, but when he went to the Bullets, you know, he became a serious go-to guy. He became a premier player. He kind of took his game to the next level. They would not have won. He was the missing piece after the Bullets lost and was swept by the Golden State Warriors. Y'all remember that? They came back the next year with Bobby D, and they won the whole thing.
And that was Al Addles' team.
Yeah, I was going to say, interesting to note Al Addles, pride of North Carolina A&T. So that's another
Hall of Famer too. Yeah.
And remember, for purposes of the 2.0, you don't have to refer to it in its politically correct form, guys. We all know Black college. I grew up watching Charlie Neal do Black college sports. I worked with Charlie Neal doing Black college sports. We're going to be unapologetically Black right here. Charlie Neal, Luke Williams with us as we continue here talking about 2 HBCU Hall of Famers. And let's flip the script a little bit and bring it a little bit contemporarily, Luke, to Ben Wallace. And I remember meeting this humble country kid who was just big and was fearsome, but really had a heart of gold when we were doing the Black College Basketball All-Star game in Atlanta. And to watch him be recognized for doing the dirty work. I mean, this is a guy who goes to the Hall of Fame for being the classic lunch pail kid. Talk about Ben Wallace's walk from Virginia Union to NBA champion to Hall of Fame. This is a wild moment for me.
Before you go to the Virginia Union, you know, he's from Alabama. You know, he was born in Alabama, and he actually went, before he came to Virginia Union, he went to a community college in Ohio, Cayuga, I believe it was Cayuga Community College. Cuyahoga, yeah, and outside of Cleveland, before he ever got to Virginia Union. And then, you know, the rest is history. Go ahead, Luke.
But the big thing was that as much of a force as he was in the CIAA, he was one of these guys that you would figure, oh, he had a good college career on the Black college level. It's going to be very hard to make it in the NBA without some offensive skills. Well, the lead on my story this week is that of the 140 NBA and ABA players that are in the Hall of Fame, his 5.7 points per game career average is the lowest ever. You know, so to impact the game, I mean, even the greatest defensive player that arguably, I guess, and maybe not arguably, Bill Russell, he was able to score double digits. Ben Wallace did not score double digits, and despite that, he was a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, a 5-time, I think, All NBA player, All NBA First Defensive Team. He was probably, and I think you'd have to compare him when you talked about Bobby Dandridge, who you compare him to. You would have to compare Ben Wallace to maybe somebody like Dennis Rodman. Right. You know, not known at all for scoring, but impacting the game tremendously as a defensive player and as a rebounder.
And Charlie, Go ahead, Charlie. I wanted to ask you about that because, Rodman getting into the Hall of Fame seemed to make voters, if you will, appreciate the impact of defense. And
sure,
Detroit does not win the NBA championship without Ben Wallace. And who would have thought that with two Wallaces on that team, Ben and Rashid, it would be Ben that's in the Hall of Fame.
For real.
Well, that's for sure. You talk about him being the Let's Play player. He was the only undrafted player to be voted a starter in an NBA All-Star game. And the thing is, if you remember a game, he blocked Shaquille O'Neal, a shot on Shaquille O'Neal underneath. And Shaquille to this day will tell you that he thought it was a foul, that was not a clean block. Shaquille will not own up to the fact that he got blocked by Ben Wallace. I mean, he's the only player to have 1,000 rebounds, 100 blocks, 100 steals, 4 straight years. So those numbers, yes, he didn't put up a lot of points, but those numbers I just mentioned, rebounds, blocks, and steals, that's what got him in the Hall of Fame.
And this is just a part of this legacy of the CIAA. And I want to get both of you guys' thoughts because I'm, even with the gray beard, too young to remember the true greatness, pre-segregation, pre-integration, quite frankly. During the Jim Crow times, would it be safe to say that the CIAA was the best conference in America?
Well, let me go first, Charlie.
Go ahead.
You probably, let me give you my history. My first CIAA tournament was 1964. I was 8 years old. And I saw Maurice McHartley for North Carolina A&T. A&T won the championship. He was the MVP. And his reputation and his signature thing was he played with a toothpick in his mouth. He ended up going to the ABA, had a 5 or 6 year career in the ABA. All I can tell you is experiencing the CIAA as a young man, there was nothing to compare with it. Watching the Dukes and Carolinas play on television, and the style that they played, the style that the CIAA played then was the style you see in the NBA today. When we started talking about Norfolk State averaging 106 points per game and Earl Monroe scoring 44 points a game, and you could go down the list, Mike Davis scoring 38 points per game. The list is incredible. It is the style that is played in the NBA today. And remember, this is when all of these Black kids couldn't go to and would not be accepted to the large Division I institutions. They couldn't play at Carolina and Virginia Tech and all the other places in the South, the Kentuckys and whatnot. So I was fortunate to come along in that era where it changed, where Texas Western knocked off Kentucky with 5 Black starters. And the CIAA echoed that. And as from that standpoint, yes, it was the best basketball league in the country from my perspective.
So Vic Bubas and Lenny Rosenblatt weren't your cup of tea when you were growing up, huh?
Oh, not at all. No, the CIAA tournament was the place to go. No question.
Ain't no question. There's no question. I mean, and when you look at, let's just go take it another step further. You look at the Basketball Hall of Fame from the CIAA. You have Sam Jones. You have Earl Monroe. You have was Earl Lloyd, wasn't West
Earl
Virginia
Lloyd,
State?
Earl Lloyd,
they
Willis
were
Reed
at the time.
John McClendon.
Willis Reed was Grambling.
Okay, you're talking about CIAA, right?
CIAA.
John McClendon as a coach.
You had John McClendon, who was a coach. Big House Gaines, who played at Morgan State and then went on to Winston-Salem. Yeah. And then when you look at remember the CIAA. I shouldn't say the college football, the Basketball Hall of Fame put the Harlem Globetrotters in as a team, which had
Curly Neal in it. Yeah,
right.
But also
Harrison from North Carolina Central. Go ahead.
But no, I was going to say, and this is not a CIAA team, but I just found out because they were just inducted last year. The Tennessee State team that won 3 NAIA. Is in the Hall of Fame also.
Yeah, that was John McClendon's squad,
absolutely.
That Tennessee A&I squad. Right. They were 3 straight years they won the NAIA championship. You got Al Addles, okay?
That's right.
As we keep talking about people from the CIAA in the college, in the Basketball Hall of Fame, Cleo Hill, is not in the Hall of Fame, but some of the people, now you look at first rounders. Sam Jones was a first rounder, draft choice in 57. Cleo Hill was a first round draft choice in 61. Earl Monroe was a first round draft choice in 67. Charles Oakley in 1985. I mean, you can't argue the CIAA. You can't argue.
You know, when they say CIAA for life, it starts on the basketball floor, y'all.
Yeah.
Hey, guys, I can't appreciate you enough for dropping the knowledge on us. And folks, there was basketball at Black colleges before Google. You just need to use Google to truly appreciate the greatness of the game. And I just want to know on this screen right now for all the world to see, who's buying when we get to Springfield this December, right? I mean, which one?
September 11th.
September 11th. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry,
Okay.
September. So again, we got a lot to get into the first month of football season, but this is going to be one of those moments in time that you have to be a part of. Charlie Neal, the voice of Black college sports for my generation. Luke Williams, writer, historian extraordinaire of all things Black college sports related for my generation. Hey, yo, these are two American jewels, fellas. Hey, thank you much for spending time with us on Sports Groove 2.0. I look forward to doing it again real soon.
Well, glad I could do it.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Stick with us. We got more of what you came here for as we rock on HSRN, putting the U in HBCU, because Black Talk matters over here. Deuces. Good look, fellas. Let me go ahead.